I've had enough of your disrespect, the constant undermining, the years of making me feel small.
The first time I heard the words, they cut through the silence of my living room like a hammer blow against glass. This property reverts to blood family now. Pack your bags and get out. Raymond Coleman's voice boomed with the confidence of a man who had spent his entire life believing the world bent to his rules. I stood there in the doorway, still wrapped in the black funeral dress from the day before, the fabric heavy with grief and the faint smell of lilies from the church service. My husband, Marcus, had been laid to rest less than 24 hours ago, yet here his father was, ordering me out of the very home Marcus and I had built together. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. My eyes followed Raymond's hand as he gestured toward his sons, Gerald and Timothy, like a general commanding soldiers. They were already lifting furniture, my grandmother's antique chair, Marcus's favorite reading spot, the place he'd sip tea after long days at the veterinary clinic. Watching them carry it out without hesitation was like watching strangers dismantle my memories piece by piece. "You have no right to be here," I said, my voice quiet but steady, even as my hands trembled at my sides. Raymond turned toward me. His weathered face twisted into a smirk, satisfaction etched into every wrinkle. "No right? This is family property, girl. Always has been, always will be. Marcus is gone now. And you're not blood. Simple as that." Those words, "you're not blood," rang in my ears like a verdict. For 8 years, I had been Marcus's wife. 8 years of holiday dinners, where the conversations fell silent the moment I walked in. 8 years of sitting at the far end of the table while his mother, Patricia, positioned me like an afterthought. 8 years of forcing myself to believe that, in time, they would accept me. But in that moment, watching them toss my wedding photographs into a box as if they were trash, I realized how naive I had been. My place in their family had never been real to them. To them, I was temporary, a shadow standing beside Marcus. My name is Ashley Coleman. I am 37 years old. Until yesterday, I thought I understood my place in this world. I was Marcus's partner, a nurse who had built a quiet life with the man I loved in Richmond, Virginia. Our Victorian house, passed down to Marcus from his grandfather, was more than wood and brick. It was the backdrop of our love story, a symbol of everything we had endured together. And yet, as I watched Raymond's sons haul away my belongings, I felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. To the Colemans, blood was thicker than vows, thicker than love, thicker than the law itself. They didn't see me as a wife. They saw me as an intruder. What they didn't know, though what would soon unravel their every assumption, was that Marcus had never underestimated them. My gentle, soft-spoken husband, the man who stayed up late, nursing sick animals back to health, had seen through his family's coldness years before, and he had quietly prepared for this very day. But I didn't know that yet. At that moment, all I knew was grief. My husband was gone. My home was under siege. My identity as his partner was being erased in real time. I stood frozen in the doorway, replaying the last words Marcus had spoken to me in our bedroom just days before. His hand, frail from the pain medication, had squeezed mine with surprising strength. "Ashley," he whispered, "promise me, don't let them intimidate you. You have every right. Every single right." I hadn't understood the full meaning of his words then. But as I watched the Coleman men carry out pieces of my life, something inside me shifted. My sorrow began to harden into something else, resolve. This wasn't just about furniture or family heirlooms. This was about the value of love versus the illusion of bloodline. This was about every outsider who had ever been told they didn't belong, every spouse dismissed as temporary, every woman shoved to the margins of her own story. I took a breath, forcing my voice to steady. "And Marcus wouldn't want this." Raymond's reply came like a whip. "Marcus is dead, and he was too soft-hearted when it came to you. We told him from the start you were after the money. Well, that charade is over now." The words struck like blows, each syllable another attempt to erase 8 years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. My chest ached, but I refused to let him see me break. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Marcus had already left me the only gift that mattered: protection against their cruelty. But that part of the story will come later. For now, all you need to know is this: my husband's death was not the end of my fight. It was the beginning. And though I stood there in a funeral dress, trembling and outnumbered, I would soon discover that Marcus had written the ending long before his family ever started their war. Because love, real love, doesn't vanish with death. Sometimes it rises from the grave as the most powerful kind of justice. In the quiet days before Marcus's illness, before the arguments and the whispered plots about family property, our lives had felt simple, ordinary, even. I was a nurse, accustomed to long shifts and the heavy emotional toll of tending to patients who often reminded me how fragile life is. Marcus was a veterinarian, the kind of man who would stay at the clinic long after hours because a frightened child couldn't bear to leave her injured puppy behind. We weren't wealthy. Our house, though beautiful, was not a symbol of grandeur to me. It was a symbol of work, compromise, and shared dreams. But to Marcus's family, that house was something else entirely. It wasn't a home. It was a monument, a Victorian relic of 3 generations of Coleman pride. To them, I was not a wife living inside its walls. I was an intruder trespassing on hallowed ground. From the very first dinner at their long mahogany table, I understood my place. Patricia Coleman, my mother-in-law, had looked me up and down with the same measured gaze she might use to appraise an antique rug. "She's very practical," Patricia had said that night, her voice lilting in a way that made practical sound like a disease. I smiled politely, clearing dishes while Marcus spoke to his father about the veterinary practice. My silence was my shield, but I burned. That single word, practical, was her way of reminding me I came from a working-class family, that I had clawed my way through school while she and her friends sent their daughters to private colleges and European study programs. I wasn't one of them, and she wanted me to remember that. The digs didn't stop after that night. They became part of the rhythm of family gatherings, subtle, dismissive, always wrapped in the disguise of civility. Patricia would mention the Anderson girl, daughter of her friend, who had studied equine medicine at Cornell. Raymond would casually ask if Marcus ever regretted not marrying someone from the right kind of family. At first, I endured it for Marcus's sake. He was my anchor, my reason for staying in those suffocating dining rooms where crystal glasses sparkled, but conversations froze the moment I entered. I told myself it was worth it because of him. He noticed, of course. He always noticed. He'd slide his hand over mine under the table, his thumb brushing comfort into my skin as if to say, I see you. I choose you. And he did choose me, over and over again. I'll never forget the day Patricia said, within earshot, Marcus, dear, happiness is one thing, but compatibility is another. Think of your children. Don't you want someone who can truly be part of this family? I was in the kitchen rinsing glasses, and though the walls were thin, her tone cut sharper than the clinking of porcelain. Marcus didn't let it slide. His voice was firm, almost uncharacteristically so. Mother, Ashley is exactly my kind of people. She is caring, hardworking, and she makes me happy. That should be enough. Those words sustained me in the years that followed. But even with his loyalty, the truth never changed. I was tolerated, never embraced. At holidays, I was seated at the far end of the table, always next to the children or the unmarried cousins. When Marcus and I announced our engagement, Raymond's first question wasn't about our happiness. It was about a prenuptial agreement. You understand, Ashley, he'd said, his tone as clinical as a contract negotiation. That family property has been passed down through generations. The house, the land, the practice, these things stay within the bloodline. Marcus is young and romantic, but business is business. Marcus had shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw tightening. Dad, we don't need to discuss this now. But Raymond pressed on. Actually, we do. Ashley seems like a sensible girl. I'm sure she understands the importance of preserving legacy. Legacy. That word hung over me like a shadow. To them, legacy wasn't about kindness or compassion or building something together. It was about walls, deeds, and bank accounts. They never realized that I had never cared about their property. I loved Marcus for the way his eyes lit up when a sick animal took its first steps after treatment, for the way he stayed awake with me during my double shifts just to keep me company, for the way he planted marigolds in our garden because I told him they reminded me of my mother. But none of that mattered to the Colemans. To them, I was still an outsider, temporary, replaceable, a name that would eventually fade from their family tree. This wasn't just about me, though. I know now it's a story many women carry in silence. Families like the Colemans exist everywhere. Families where lineage is measured in blood and status, not in love or loyalty. In America, especially in old southern towns like Richmond, wealth passed through generations becomes more than money. It becomes identity. And anyone who doesn't fit that mold, no matter how much love or dedication they give, is branded an interloper. But here's the truth. Marriage isn't about merging bank accounts or maintaining bloodlines. It's about building a life where both people feel seen and valued. Marcus understood that. And because he did, he quietly prepared for what his family would try to deny me. I didn't know it then, not fully. All I knew was the heaviness in my chest each time Patricia's smile tightened, or Raymond's tone dropped into that condescending drawl. I knew I was fighting a battle Marcus wished didn't exist. But he also knew it was one we could never ignore. And that battle, the one they thought I was too practical and too beneath them to win, was only just beginning. The moment that would change, everything happened not in a courtroom, nor in a lawyer's office, but at a wedding reception on a warm summer night, 3 months before Marcus died. We had gone to celebrate his cousin's marriage, another grand Coleman gathering that dripped with tradition. White roses, a string quartet, chandeliers glittering above tables dressed in ivory linen. The kind of event where family pride was the real guest of honor. As usual, I played my role, the polite outsider. I smiled, made small talk with distant relatives who barely remembered my name, and excused myself when the stairs grew too long. I remember slipping away to the restroom, grateful for a moment of quiet. When I returned, my heart froze. Through the ballroom side doors, I saw them, Raymond, Patricia, Gerald, and Timothy, huddled close, voices low but urgent. They didn't see me in the shadows. And then I heard it. "When Marcus goes," Timothy asked, his voice almost casual, "the property comes back to the family, right? She's not actually entitled to anything long-term, is she?" My blood ran cold. "Don't be ridiculous," Raymond answered, his tone sharp. "Wives get temporary rights, but family property always returns to blood. That's how it's been for generations. Ashley will get whatever Marcus leaves her in personal things, but the house, the land, the practice, it all comes back where it belongs." Gerald nodded, relief on his face. "Good. I was worried there might be legal complications with her involved." "Complication?" Patricia's voice was laced with venom. "The only complication will be getting her to leave peacefully. You know how these types can be when money is involved." Then a cousin, Walter, chuckled as he raised his glass. "Maybe she'll remarry quickly." Problem solved. The words felt like daggers. They were discussing my future widowhood as casually as if they were planning dessert. To them, Marcus's death was inevitable, a mere detail in the grand plan to reclaim their property. I stumbled backward, hiding in the restroom once more, clutching the counter until my hands stopped shaking. I stayed there far longer than necessary, staring at my pale reflection, wondering how people could be so cruel, so certain of their entitlement. When I finally emerged, the music and laughter had resumed, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed in me. I returned to find Marcus speaking with his elderly uncle about wildlife surgery techniques. His face lit up when he saw me, his whole being warming the space around him. He pulled me into the conversation with ease, weaving me into his world as though to remind me, "You belong here, with me." Later that night, in the car, I couldn't hold it in. "Marcus," I said carefully, "I overheard your family tonight. They were talking about estate plans, about what happens to the property if something happens to you." His knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, and the brightness in his eyes dimmed. He drove in silence for a moment, the hum of the tires filling the car like a warning. Then he glanced at me, his expression hardening into something I had rarely seen in him: determination. "What exactly did they say?" "They were confident. Too confident. They acted like it's already decided, that everything comes back to them. Marcus exhaled slowly, then reached across the console and took my hand. Ashley, I need to tell you something. I've been putting off this conversation, but it's time. That night, in our kitchen, Marcus poured a glass of wine and unfolded a truth I had never fully known. He admitted he had created a will years ago, just after we married. He had already changed property deeds to joint ownership, with right of survivorship. If I die first, Ashley, everything automatically becomes yours, he said, his voice calm but firm. I stared at him in disbelief. But your family doesn't know this. No, he replied. And they never will. They've been living under an archaic illusion that blood overrides law. They think legacy is about control. But legacy, Ashley, is about love. He left the table for a moment and returned with a folder thick with documents. Inside was more than just a will. It was a shield. Bank accounts, investments, the practice, every detail mapped out. And on top, a letter addressed to his family. To my family, it began in his careful handwriting. If you are reading this, I am no longer here to protect Ashley from your cruelty. For 8 years, I have watched you treat her as an outsider. You have assumed she is temporary, but I assure you, she is permanent. She is my wife, and everything I have built is hers. I read through tears as Marcus explained, line by line, why he had chosen to protect me. He recounted their dismissive words, their manipulations, their arrogance. He had noticed everything. I looked up, shaken, my voice breaking. Marcus, this is incredible. But why didn't you tell me sooner? He set down his glass of wine, sadness shadowing his smile. Because I hoped we'd never need it. I kept thinking, maybe one day, they'll see what I see. Maybe they'll accept you. But tonight proved me wrong. And I won't leave you unprotected. In that moment, I realized Marcus was not only the gentle healer I loved, he was also a man who could stand as a shield against his own bloodline. A man who understood that family is not defined by blood, but by choice, by loyalty, by love. And though we didn't know it yet, that choice would soon matter more than anything. Because within weeks, death would come knocking. And with it, the Colemans would test every boundary Marcus had fought to preserve. The weeks after that wedding night felt strangely calm, almost deceptive. Marcus and I went on with our routines, me at the hospital, him at the clinic, yet I carried his revelation like a secret flame in my chest. Every time his parents looked at me with that cold detachment, every time Gerald or Timothy made some sly remark about family business, I wanted to scream that their power was an illusion. They had no idea Marcus had already sealed their fate with signatures and notarized pages. But if his family had no clue, Marcus's awareness grew sharper. It was as though naming their schemes out loud awakened something in him. He wasn't just my gentle, soft-spoken husband anymore. He was a man determined to draw a line in stone. One evening, as the sun cast long golden beams across our kitchen, he spread those documents on the table again. Ashley, he said, his voice steady, I need you to see how thorough this is. I leaned over the papers, my pulse quickening. Property deeds, joint ownership clauses, survivorship rights, bank accounts, everything tied to me. Marcus, this is airtight. He nodded. It had to be. My father still walks around like he owns the practice, but I bought him out 3 years ago. With my own money. He doesn't hold a single legal claim. And this house? He may treat it like a Coleman monument, but on paper, it belongs to us. Then he placed a letter in front of me, written in his careful, looping script. And this, he said quietly, is the heart of it all. I unfolded the pages. His words struck deeper than any contract could. To my family, if you are reading this, I am no longer here to shield Ashley. I've witnessed how you have treated her, coldness, dismissive remarks, constant suspicion. You reduced her to a placeholder when she was my partner. This will is not simply about assets. It is about correcting a cruelty that has gone unchallenged. She is my wife, my choice, my legacy. And if you reject her, you reject me. I pressed the letter to my chest, my tears soaking the ink. Marcus, why did you keep all of this hidden? He reached across the table, covering my hands with his. Because love, Ash, is not just what we say, it's what we protect. I wanted to believe my parents might change. But after that wedding, I understood they never would. They see you as temporary. I see you as forever. And I refuse to leave your future to their arrogance. His words settled in me like steel. I had always known Marcus was kind, compassionate, almost gentle to a fault. But now I saw another side, pragmatic, determined, quietly fierce. The truth was, Marcus had carried the weight of 2 battles all along, saving animals by day and saving me from his family's disdain by night. In those moments, I began to understand what protection really meant. Not grand gestures or public declarations, but paperwork signed in silence, letters written in private, steps taken long before danger arrived. He was a man who anticipated storms, who built walls of law and love so that I would stand secure even when he no longer could. I remember whispering, "Marcus, what if they find out?" His expression didn't waver. "Then let them. The law isn't on their side, and neither is my heart." It was then that I began to see our life through a different lens. Every dismissive glance from Patricia, every condescending remark from Raymond, it wasn't just cruelty. It was proof of why Marcus's actions mattered. For years, I had felt powerless under their scrutiny, but now I realized Marcus had been quietly transforming that weakness into strength. Outside our home, Richmond society clung to traditions that seemed carved in granite. Bloodline before all else, old money before hard work, inheritance before compassion. But within our home, Marcus and I were rewriting that script. We were proving that love could defy legacy, that a man could choose his wife over his family's pride. Looking back now, I see that those nights at the kitchen table were more than preparation. They were Marcus's way of teaching me how to stand without him. His voice would echo in my mind long after he was gone. Don't let them intimidate you. You have every right. But fate, cruel as it is, doesn't let happiness linger forever. Only 6 weeks after that wedding, Marcus began complaining of persistent indigestion, the kind that even his strong will couldn't brush aside. At first, we laughed it off. Too many late-night pizzas after emergency calls at the clinic, we thought. But then came the fatigue, the weight loss, the pallor that drained the warmth from his cheeks. The diagnosis was swift and brutal. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. By the time we caught it, the disease had spread beyond hope. I remember sitting in Dr. Williams's office, the sterile white walls closing in. 6 months, she said softly. Maybe 8 if we're aggressive with treatment. The world tilted. My ears rang. 6 months. 8 if we were lucky. My Marcus, the man who planted marigolds for me, who stayed up late nursing owls and raccoons back to health, was being counted in months. I turned to him, expecting fear, panic, rage. Instead, he squeezed my hand and whispered, "Ashley, we still have time, and we have work to do." That very night, he called his lawyer, Charles Petton. "Charles," he said into the phone, his voice calm. "It's Marcus Coleman. We need to finalize everything. Yes, it's urgent." And with that call, the battle truly began. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital corridors, chemotherapy sessions, and quiet nights where we clung to each other as if our bodies could hold back the tide of time. Marcus's diagnosis had stripped away the illusion of tomorrow, but it had also crystallized his determination. If the Colemans thought they could swoop in after his death, they would soon discover they were walking straight into a fortress he had already built. Charles, the estate attorney, became a near-constant presence in our home. He arrived in crisp suits with stacks of documents, his calm demeanor grounding us in the middle of chaos. While Marcus's strength waned, his focus sharpened. He reviewed every clause, signed every page, and even insisted on adding one last safeguard. "Marcus," Charles said during one visit, "given what you've told me about your family's behavior, I recommend a no contest clause. It means if anyone challenges the will, they forfeit everything. They won't even have the option of dragging Ashley through a court battle." Marcus didn't hesitate. His voice, though weaker than before, carried iron. "Do it. I want her protected. No loopholes, no harassment. If they try to fight, they lose it all." I watched him across the table, pale from the chemo, hands trembling slightly as he signed his name. It struck me that love doesn't always come in grand romantic gestures. Sometimes it comes in ink, in legal language, in the quiet resolve of a man determined to shield the woman he loves from cruelty, even after death. But the Colemans, blind to all of this, carried on with their schemes. Their visits during those months grew more frequent, but they were never about Marcus's comfort or his dwindling strength. They came with sharp eyes, taking inventory of the house as if they were already preparing an estate sale. I remember Patricia's voice one afternoon, sickly sweet as she sat beside me while Marcus napped. "Ashley, dear, have you given any thought to where you'll live afterward? I mean, long term? This house is really too much for a single woman, don't you think?" "This is my home," I replied firmly, fighting to keep my voice steady. She exchanged a glance with Raymond, who added in that condescending tone I knew so well. "Family property requires family resources to maintain. It's expensive, Ashley. Best to be practical." Practical. There was that word again, the same one Patricia had used the first night I ever sat at their table. But this time, instead of shrinking under it, I felt the burn of Marcus's letter tucked safely in Charles's office. They didn't know it, but every word they spoke was fuel for the justice Marcus had already prepared. The worst moment came just days before Marcus passed. Gerald and Timothy arrived under the guise of visiting their brother, but I overheard them in the hallway, voices low and hurried. Dad wants to start moving some of the valuable pieces before the funeral, Gerald whispered. He's worried Ashley might try to claim them. Smart, Timothy replied. We should probably change the locks too, just in case. What about the practice? Do we need to notify his patients? Dad's already lined up Dr. Peterson. He'll take over once Marcus is gone. I stood frozen outside the door, their words pounding in my head like hammers. Marcus was still alive, breathing, fighting, and yet his family was already dismantling his life, like vultures circling a body not yet cold. That night, I told Marcus what I had heard. His body was weak, racked by pain, but his eyes flashed with anger. They're already dividing up our life, he whispered. I'm afraid so. He squeezed my hand with surprising force. Ashley, promise me something. When they come, and they will come, don't let them intimidate you. You have every right. Charles has the documents. He knows exactly what to do. Tears blurred my vision as I bent closer. I promise. And don't feel guilty about fighting them, he added, his voice fading. They've made their choice about how to treat you. Now they'll live with the consequences. 2 mornings later, Marcus slipped away. It was October, the golden light spilling through our bedroom windows, painting the walls in soft hues as if heaven itself was reaching down to cradle him. I held his hand until the very end, whispering love into his ear as his chest rose and fell one final time. Grief doesn't hit all at once. It seeps into your bones, dull at first, then sharp, then hollow. But I had no time to collapse into mourning, because the Colemans wasted no time stepping into the void Marcus left behind. The funeral was held at St. Paul's Episcopal Church, the same place where we had exchanged vows 8 years earlier. Only this time, instead of standing beside me, Marcus lay beneath a polished coffin surrounded by roses. I wanted nothing more than to honor him quietly, but even in death, his parents found a way to remind me of my place. Family sits in the front row, Patricia said that morning, handing me a program. You'll sit in the second row. I swallowed the sting and obeyed, knowing that soon enough their arrogance would undo them. After the service, as mourners drifted away, Raymond pulled me aside, his voice low but commanding. We'll give you a few days to grieve, Ashley. But then we need to discuss practical matters. The house will need to be prepared for Gerald's family. They're planning to move back to Richmond. I stared at him in disbelief. Raymond, that house is my home. Was your home, he corrected coldly. You were Marcus's wife, and we appreciate what you did for him. But now it's time for family property to return to family. I am family, I said, my voice shaking with both grief and fury. His eyes narrowed. You're not blood, Ashley. And that makes all the difference. What he didn't know was that Marcus had already torn that illusion to shreds with pen and paper. And very soon, Raymond would learn that bloodlines mean nothing when love leaves behind ironclad truth. The morning I returned to the house, the air was crisp, brittle with autumn, the kind that carries both the scent of fallen leaves and the ache of endings. I turned onto our street with a heavy heart, still raw from Marcus's funeral, hoping for quiet. But quiet was the last thing I found. Raymond's truck was already parked in the driveway. Gerald's van pulled up alongside it. Through the front windows, I saw shadows moving, his sons carrying boxes, shifting furniture, handling what wasn't theirs with greedy efficiency. They hadn't even waited a week. For a moment, I just sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, breath shallow. Grief swelled in me like a tide, but Marcus's words pulsed louder than my sorrow. Don't let them intimidate you. You have every right. I reached for my phone and dialed Charles. My voice was steady, though my heart raced. Charles, it's Ashley Coleman. They're here. They're moving things out of the house. His answer was calm, measured. Are you inside? No, I'm in the car. They don't know I'm here yet. Good. Stay there. I'll be there in 20 minutes with the documents. Do you remember what Marcus told you to do? Yes, I whispered. Let them dig their hole deeper. Exactly. So I waited. From my car, I watched Raymond orchestrate the removal like he was running a construction project. Gerald and Timothy loaded my grandmother's rocking chair, my grandmother's, into their van. Patricia appeared briefly, pointing at Marcus's reading chair as if she were choosing merchandise from a showroom. Every gesture, every smug smile confirmed what Marcus had known. They believed entitlement was stronger than law. When Charles's silver BMW turned onto the street, relief swept through me like a current. I stepped out of my car and walked toward the house, each step fueled by anger and resolve. I stopped in the doorway, watching Raymond command his sons as if he were king of an empire. You're back sooner than expected, he said when he noticed me, not even pausing his work. We thought you might want to stay away for a few more days while we handle the transition. The transition? I asked, my voice low. Yes, Raymond said smoothly. Getting the house ready for Gerald's family. Don't worry, we'll pack your personal items separately. You can collect them once you've found somewhere else. I looked at him, marveling at his certainty. Raymond, you forgot something. He frowned. And what's that, dear? Before I could answer, Charles stepped through the doorway, his briefcase in hand. His presence shifted the air immediately, authority wrapped in professionalism. Raymond's smirk faltered. Mr. Coleman, Charles said, voice firm. I'm Charles Peyton, Marcus's attorney. We need to have a conversation. Raymond's eyes darted from Charles to the furniture being loaded into the van. His color drained. What is this about? It's about the fact that you're currently removing a property that doesn't belong to you, Charles replied calmly. Everything in this home belongs to Ashley Coleman, and you need to stop immediately. Gerald froze mid-step, the box in his hands slipping slightly. That's not true. This is family property. Charles's response was measured, devastating. Actually, it's not. Legally speaking, Marcus left a comprehensive will. I have it here, witnessed and notarized. It leaves everything, this house, the veterinary practice, all bank accounts and investments, to Ashley Coleman. Timothy's face twisted. A will? But family property follows legal ownership, Charles cut in. Not assumptions. And Marcus made his wishes very clear. He opened the briefcase, spreading the documents across the dining table that they had once used to belittle me at holiday dinners. The Coleman men crowded around, their once confident expressions collapsing into confusion, then anger. "This will, dated 6 months ago," Charles explained methodically, "transfers full ownership to Ashley." And even without it, the property deeds were changed to joint ownership with survivorship rights. That means everything became hers the moment Marcus passed. "You have no claim." Patricia's voice, shrill now, cut through the silence. "But she's not blood. She doesn't carry the Coleman name." Charles didn't flinch. "Under Virginia law, a spouse is the primary heir. Bloodline traditions mean nothing in court." He pulled out another page. "And Marcus included a no contest clause. If any of you challenge this will, you forfeit any possible inheritance." The room fell silent except for Patricia's sharp breathing. Raymond sank into a chair, his face red with fury, the patriarch stripped of his imagined power. Then Charles unfolded Marcus's letter. His voice softened as he began to read aloud. "To my family, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer here to protect Ashley from your cruelty. For 8 years, I have watched you treat her as an outsider. You made her endure silence, exclusion, suspicion. But she was my partner, my choice, my forever. Everything I built with her, and it belongs to her." As Marcus's words filled the room, I saw their faces blanch. Every insult, every slight, every whispered dismissal, they were all documented in my husband's careful hand. Marcus had been watching, listening, remembering. Charles closed the letter with finality. "This is not just legal. This is personal. Marcus chose his wife, and he rejected your treatment of her. The matter is settled. The Coleman family, once so sure of their dominance, now sat in silence, their empire of arrogance crumbling. For the first time in years, I felt taller than them all. The battle wasn't mine to start, but it was mine to finish." And with Marcus's words echoing in that room, I knew justice had already been written long before they tried to erase me. By the time Charles finished reading Marcus's letter, the silence in that room was heavier than the grief that had followed me since the funeral. Raymond sat slumped, his hands gripping the arms of the chair as if trying to hold on to authority that no longer existed. Patricia's lips trembled, but no words came. Gerald stared at the floor, shame written across his face, while Timothy simply looked stunned. His earlier bravado evaporated into nothing. And then it began, the slow unraveling of everything they had believed to be theirs. Within hours, Charles had them return every item they had removed. Gerald carried my grandmother's rocking chair back inside, his face pale as if he were delivering evidence of his own crime. Timothy unloaded Marcus's reading chair, his hands shaking. Even the locks they had changed were replaced, at their expense. They were banned from stepping onto the property again without my explicit permission. The veterinary practice, which Raymond had already promised to Dr. E. Peterson, remained fully mine. Gerald's dreams of moving his family into his rightful home dissolved into dust, leaving him to explain to his wife and children why the house they had been told would be theirs was suddenly untouchable. Timothy's quiet assumption that he would inherit a share of the practice cost him the job he thought was guaranteed. And Patricia, watched her social circle whisper about her humiliation, how she and Raymond had tried to strip a grieving widow of everything, only to be exposed by her own son's words. But the greatest blow was to Raymond himself. For decades, he had preached about family loyalty, about bloodline, about preserving legacy. And yet, in the end, his own son had rejected him, not in anger, but in quiet, calculated clarity. Marcus's letter had stripped away every illusion, every excuse. It had revealed the truth. Love mattered more than lineage, kindness more than tradition, justice more than control. I remember standing in the kitchen that night, holding Marcus's letter close. Around me were the belongings they had tried to steal, each piece now a testament to Marcus's foresight and love. And in that moment, I realized his greatest gift wasn't the house or the practice, or even the financial security he had left behind. His greatest gift was validation. Proof that our love had been real, worthy, permanent. Proof that I had been his family, even if the Colemans never saw me as theirs. Proof that sometimes the quietest souls fight the fiercest battles for those they love and win. The irony of it all is that I never wanted revenge. I never plotted against them. But life has a way of giving justice to the patient. My revenge was not born of bitterness. It was born of Marcus's unwavering love, his decision to stand by me even when his family would not. As I close this chapter of my life, I think often about what legacy truly means. It's not furniture or deeds or land. Legacy is the love we leave behind, the protections we put in place for those we cherish, the truth we carve into the world so others cannot erase it. Marcus gave me that legacy. And no Coleman, no matter how entitled, can ever take it away. To you who've listened to my story, I thank you. I share it not just for myself, but for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider, who has ever been told they didn't belong. Remember this: your worth is not decided by someone else's bloodline or arrogance. Love chooses differently. And sometimes, love wins in the quietest, most powerful ways. May you hold tight to the ones who see you, who protect you, who choose you. I wish you health, love, and family happiness. And if this story touched you, if Marcus's act of love made you believe in the strength of quiet justice, I invite you to subscribe and join me for more stories like this. Because family is not always about blood, it's about who stands beside you when the world tells you not to belong.